Ahoy there, and welcome back to Building with the Boys. I'm Scott, and we have got part 18 of Build the Hachette Titanic. In this one, we will be doing a little bit on the superstructure, but a very relevant part. We will be fitting the skylight that goes over the grand staircase. We spoke about the grand staircase in the last issue. There's very little to that. I mean, it's literally dropping it in, and the reason for that is we are getting a grand staircase for this model. So you'll be able to remove that and look down into the grand staircase if you want. That will all light up, and I'm sure it will look really quite lovely. The other thing we're doing is we've got a massive piece of hull to attach to this one. So the boat's really going to be coming along now structure-wise. It's going to look good. So not loads to do. It's going to be, I would imagine, fiddly, getting those screws in, but it'll be all right. We'll get through it. So we're going to get this open, take a look at the parts, put this together, and at the end, we will be having a chat, and we are back at the movies. And now, I had originally said we were going to be doing SOS Titanic. We haven't. We've watched something else. So tune in for that at the end. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button. It helps us a lot. And also subscribe if you're one of the thousands of viewers that watch but haven't hit the subscribe button yet. It would be very much appreciated. You'll get notifications if you hit the bell of every single time one of these come up, and you'll be able to stay with us right to the very end. We have all 140 pieces built and a very beautiful Titanic. Anyway, let's get on with this, and let's get this built. So here are the parts we get with stage 18. We've got this very large piece of the hull section. See the portals there. We have our skylight for the grand staircase. Now, I'm hoping the camera's picking this up, but you can see it is detailed. And there's a lot on it. You must forgive my fingernails. I've been painting a diorama, so I've got paint under my nails. And then we have this window that will go above the skylight. So let's get into this. You will need to install your skylight. You will need this section here that we built last month. Okay, so all we're doing here, let me zoom in a little bit for you. Right, all we're doing is essentially a test fit. There's nothing permanent in this at all, so we're going straight through. We're going to fit this to here, which is actually unbelievably fiddly. I thought this was going to be quite... Oh, there we go. Just drops in. So there we go. That's our skylight in place. It really is that simple. And then taking this piece, and it's going to sit on there. And that's it. So we don't glue that at this stage. We don't do anything. They have advised that we can masking tape this thing in to keep it kind of in place, or if you're storing these parts, store it with your other parts. But it's all test fit at this point. There's no glue involved. Do not glue these things in because you don't need to, and they might need to come back out. So they are just loosely fitted. But that is where these are going to go. Let's move on to installing this section of hull. I've fitted the piece in, so it's very loosely fitting at the moment. And because of metal to metal, I'm using the bigger of the wearers that I use, and I'm just touching the tip of the screw in some 3-in-1 oil. And then we're going to get the first one in place, and then hopefully this should hold, because we need some pull. So we'll loosely put this one in. I'm going to tighten them up. Let's get another one loaded. Because there is a natural curvature to the boat, but you are going to have to... I mean, the screws are going to do some of this work for you. This is how you're going to get this thing to pull together. So you worry about joints and stuff. This is how you're going to get rid of them, with kind of tightening up these screws. Or, bizarrely, loosening them, because sometimes that does also relax some of the visible joints. Since that one in. One more of these IM screws, and then we also have JM screws to apply, and AM screws as well. So let's get this third one in. Okay. Okay, once that one in, let's tighten this one up over here, because I wasn't particularly happy with this one. Okay, so that's those three in. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to use our tool from the last issue. I'm going to grab that. We use a tool from the last issue, our angled stay, our angled hex key to screw in some screws. Now we got the screws with last month's pack, I believe. Yeah, we did. We got them in last month's pack. So we get the screws as well, and we get that done. So these are the screws from pack 15. Again, going to use it all. Now I've got a theory I can get one of these in without using the angled key. So I'm going to give that a go because I really did not enjoy using that angled key the last time. So hopefully I can do this without using the angled key. If I can't, well then I can't. But well, damn it, I'm going to try. And I'll be going in here. No, I think we're going to have to use that bloody key. Yeah, going to have to use the key. Right, let's get the key. So that's that one done. I've put those two in with the hex key. Now, I did it off camera because it just takes me way too long. I can't stand using Allen bolts. But they're both in, and they are here and here as well. Just a bit of a nightmare. Now, the last thing to do is there is a single AM screw to go in, and it's going to go in to this point here. This will hold and give some stability to this white frame at the top. And again, I did just touch it in 3-in-1 order to get to hold, and that's it. So let's spin it around and have a look. Now I'm seeing this for the first time as you. So how is this now looking? It's looking pretty good, right? It's looking pretty good. This is looking fairly spectacular. I'm very happy with this. Weird zoom on this one. Let me see if we can get rid of that and we can have a proper look at it. There we go. There we go. I'm really happy with this. I mean, this is solid as well. I mean, this is a chunky piece of boat now. But yeah, very happy with that. You can see the portals there. Yeah, it's looking good. I mean, this is a big lump of boat now. It really is. Fantastic. Easy enough as well. I mean, again, it's fiddly with the Allen screws. I mean, again, the joint's not bad. I know everyone complains about this section, but if that's all your eyes are looking at, then, you know, you've gone somewhere drastically wrong with your model. Because that shouldn't be the case at all. But it's looking really nice. Yeah, easy enough. Let's have a chat. This is looking impressive now. I mean, the hole's looking good. It's looking really good. I'm liking this. Yeah, I like this. I like this with a stupid smile on my face. And it's nice to work on the hull. It's good to have some structure to that boat. So we're doing a lot of superstructure work, and that's going to be the narrative for the bulk of this build. Is going to be superstructure and decking and things like that. But it's always nice to add some more hull, and it's starting to feel solid now, and I kind of like that. For those of you that are sticking around for the build instructions, thank you. Don't forget to hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. For those of you that are sticking around for our Titanic talk, we are back at the movies with the third Titanic movie we've watched. Now, I did say at the beginning, we had originally planned to watch SOS Titanic, and I had purchased it, but that's not what arrived in the post. So what actually arrived in the post, well, this is SOS Titanic. This is what should have arrived. So that is the Helen Mirren starring Titanic, which claims to be the first colour movie made about the Titanic. Now, it depends what you define as movie, because it didn't have a theatrical release, certainly not in America. I believe it may have had a theatrical release in Europe, but it was a mini-series, is what it was, which has now been edited down into a film. But that's what we were going to be watching. But that's not what turned up. So what actually turned up, we bought some HMV. How quaint, I know, right? I didn't realise there was still a thing, but we found the best price for that movie was HMV. And what actually arrived was this. So yeah, they got it half right, but I already own it, and I had no intention of buying this. I actually was going to, for the purpose of the review, originally I was going to buy the 3D version, because I thought I've seen the original one a lot. I've never watched it in 3D, and James Cameron's 3D is particularly good. So I was going to purchase the 3D Blu-ray of Titanic. I still might, But instead they sent me a DVD version of Titanic, and that HMV is why you nearly went bust more than once. But it's okay. So we thought, you know what, we've got it. Let's watch it. I've sent that one back, but we thought we'd watch 97 Titanic anyway. Now, there's not a lot I can say about this because, as I believe the third highest grossing film of all time now, everyone's seen it. But let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at it objectively from as fresh eyes as we can put on it, because it's been a long time since I've watched it. And it's a gorgeous film. I mean, the one thing you can't take away from this film is that it's beautifully shot, it's beautifully made, it's well acted, and it is a great movie. If we look at accuracy of the Titanic, it's pretty much there. I mean, there are very, very, very minor inaccuracies. When James Cameron does raise the bar. Those of you who have seen South Park know what I'm talking about. But James Cameron does raise the bar to very high heights. And I can remember when this was being made that the daggers were out for it. So a lot of rumblings were happening at the time, a lot of reports in the press that this film was going to be a disaster. Because typically Titanic films hadn't fared particularly well at the box office up to this point. There'd been a mini-series a year prior to this, I think just called Titanic, which we will be watching as well, with Catherine Zeta-Jones in it. 1996, that one came out. But I think what lent to the skepticism about this was being made a year after Waterworld had been released. Now, Waterworld's now regarded as somewhat of a cult classic, and it is a very good film, but at the time, Waterworld was hated because it was the most expensive film ever made when it came out, and the reason for it is because the set sank. So the big atoll sets got hit by a tropical storm and it all sank, and they had to rebuild it. So essentially, all the pre-production they'd done, they had to build twice. It delayed filming by months, and so the budget escalated to what sounds like a fairly normal budget by today's standards. But I want to say Waterworld cost about I think it was $106 million, which at the time was unheard of. But now for them to dump in excess of $500 million into a movie is quite common practice. And Titanic lent into that. So Titanic cost a lot of money. It was very expensive to make. But I can remember the set reports, and one of them was that everyone got spiked with LSD, and that did happen. James Cameron said that he made himself throw up before it took effect because people started getting ill at a crew party. Now, the word around the campfire is that the reason why it happened is because it was a disgruntled set worker. Because James Cameron does have a reputation for being very harsh with the crew on his movies. Famously, he filmed Aliens in the UK and could not get his head around tea time. Because they'd stop for tea. So the kind of grips and the electricians, carpenters, the lighting guys were like, it's tea break, we're going for tea. So he wants to say, I've got to get my shot. I'm like, I know you got to get your shot, but the union says, it's tea time, we're going for tea. So they break for tea, and there's a great documentary on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us, where you can go into the making of Aliens, and explains what happens. You can imagine what it's like working on set with James Cameron, but the reality of it is he does make very good films. And that's part of it, I suppose. So there were low hopes for Titanic. Nobody thought Titanic was going to be the hit that it was. Genuinely, I can remember the daggers were out for this movie. Everybody was thinking this thing is going to bomb, and it's going to bomb spectacularly. And then when it was released, boom, highest grossing film of all time, just sails to the top of the charts. And it stayed there for a really long time. Titanic was the highest grossing film in the world for over a decade. A decade maybe, I don't know, 1997 to 2000, about 2008, 2009, whenever Avatar came out. So James Cameron dethroned himself. So Avatar knocked Titanic off number one as the highest grossing film of all time. But it was huge. Titanic was absolutely huge. I mean, the Celine Dion single was massive. It was just a humongous movie. Now, a lot of the time with these movies, you think, well, it's not really warranted. I'd say it is. I'd say Titanic's a very good film. I mean, the love story is a little bit hokey, but we'll go into that. So, in that very unlikely event you haven't seen Titanic, Titanic is the story essentially of Jack and Rose. Jack is a young artist who's kind of a carefree spirit who wins his ticket aboard the Titanic. Now, an interesting link to that. At the beginning, Jack and his friend win 2 tickets to the Titanic from 2 men playing cards. And there's a link to this movie and the movie Frozen. And the characters of Sven and Olaf in Frozen, which are, I believe, the reindeer and the snowman, are named after the characters from Titanic. Sven and Olaf are the 2 men that Jack wins his tickets from. And then they go and get on board. And then we see Rose, who is a debutante. She's very pretty. And she comes from money, but her family have lost all of their money. So it's very important that she marries into wealth. And she's going to marry Cal, who is the antagonist of this movie. But is he? Because we'll talk about that at the end as well. So that's the crux of the story. She is not happy with her life. She vaguely attempts suicide by jumping off the back of the Titanic, and Jack saves her, and they have a friendship, they fall in love, and we all know what happens next. So a lot of this movie is borrowed from things that actually happened. So at the end of the movie, when Jack and Rose are hanging off the back of the boat and it makes its full vertical and goes down, they look across and they see the chef, which we spoke about last month. So that's his testimony. That's what he says he did. He was hanging onto the back and he rode it down like an elevator. So it comes from there. Molly Brown is in this. Again, wasn't called Molly Brown, but she's in it, and she kind of helps Jack with his suit and whatnot. And I suppose, had this have been a real thing, there's a chance that would have happened. Knowing what we know about Maggie Brown now, probably would have lent him a suit. And it's interesting. There were some controversies as well. I cannot remember for the life of me the name of the quartermaster that shoots the young Irish boy but that never happened. And the family were very upset that that's how he was portrayed in the film. And it's a blinder. It's a very good film. It really is, and it's worth a second watch if you haven't seen it. The CGI is starting to date now, so the exterior shots of the boat aren't fantastic. The sort of classic scene of Jack and Rose on the front of the Titanic, and I'm flying Jack, wouldn't have been possible. You couldn't access that section of the boat for you just couldn't. So yeah, it would lead to a lot of disappointment for people if they were going to get on board the Titanic. I'm going to do that. You ain't. So you couldn't get to that section of the boat. But I said that Cal is the antagonist of this movie. Now, I can't take credit for this. This went round a few years ago. And when you look at it a different way, you go, actually. So there's a theory. Well, not a theory. There's an argument that the actual antagonist of this movie is Rose. Old Rose, not young Rose. Young Rose were all in, right? So young Rose, love her, and she spits in Cal's face, and go young Rose, and we're all behind her. We got to look at the start of this movie, because at the beginning of this movie, it's Bill Paxton and his crew doing the expedition to dive down to find the heart of the ocean, which is a great big blue diamond. And instead, they find a picture of a young girl wearing it. It appears on the news, and old Rose, who's now in her 90s, sees it, contacts them, and says, "Yes, the girl in the picture is me." So Bill Paxton's like, "Cool. Can you tell us where it is?" No. I insist on being flown out there. Huh? Do you, Rose? So Rose insists on being flown out to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean to tell her story. Takes her daughter with her. That wouldn't have been cheap. So she flies out there, because she just told him this over the phone, couldn't she? Right, but doesn't. So flies out there. So where's the diamond then, Rose? Well, I've got to tell you this story. So old Rose spends the next 3 days telling them the story of how she met Jack, what happened with Cal, being given the diamond, the drawing that led to the diamond. She could have just got to the point. I know it would be much removed, but she could have. Now, one of the strangest things about this is that she insists on taking all of her effects with her. So she has this massive trunk that has to go with her. And if you're thinking, no, well, I think this part pretty much does go, yeah, there's something not quite right with Rose. She insists on taking all of her comforts with her. And you see Rose's room on board the boat, and you see these pictures of young Rose after the Titanic, and you see her where she's about to board a biplane and she became a pilot, and she's riding a horse at Coney Island, and all these things she's done. Now, I ask you, who does that? Think about it. If you invited somebody to come and stay with you for the weekend, and they're like, oh yeah, cool, and you went into the spare room they were staying in, and they just lined up pictures of themselves all around the room, it'd be a bit weird, wouldn't it? I mean, because it's not pictures of her husband, it's not pictures of her children, it's pictures of herself. Who does that? That's like sociopathic behaviour. But all the pictures in old Rose's room are of her. They're not of her family, they're not of her kids, just her. And I'm like, that's a bit weird. So after spending 3 days telling them about her time on the Titanic, she still doesn't tell them. Still doesn't tell them where the diamond is. And then in the evening, Rose goes out to the deck of the boat, and it's revealed she's still got it. She's still got the very expensive diamond, which in today's money would be worth over $800 million. And she throws it over the side. Now, it's her diamond. She knew what she wants with it. But it's not her diamond, because this is the other part that we find out, that Cal, shortly after the Titanic, lost all of his money on the crash of Wall Street and killed himself. I mean, he wouldn't have if he'd still had his $800 million diamond. Now, Cal was a nice guy, but he certainly didn't deserve to die, did he? But yeah, it's not yours, darling. It's not yours. It's not yours. But she kept it anyway. To throw it back in the ocean. So she throws it in the ocean. Now, I get it. There's this whole thing of she's returning it to the Titanic. All right, okay. I mean, your kids could have used the money, couldn't they? Or your grandkids. Or you could have at least told Bill Paxton, stop spending hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to find this thing. It ain't there. You could have told him that. You didn't. So, I mean, I'm sure he would have been happy just to see it. Nope, you ain't looking at it. Bosh, gone into the ocean. Gone forever. Rose then goes back to her room, and we assume that Rose passes in the night, because the next thing we see is Rose, young again, walking down the deck of the Titanic into the grand staircase, and everybody that perished is there, and they're all clapping, welcome Rose, and there standing at the top of the stairs is Jack to meet her, where she can spend eternity with him. And you go, ah, but is it ah? Because again, Rose married, she had kids, and rather than spend eternity with the man that she spent her whole life with, she's instead spending it with a hookup from 100 years ago. Imagine being Ghost Rose's husband. You're like, oh, Rose will be here soon. I get to spend eternity with the love of my life. And you're like, oh, no, she's just going to slope off with some guy she hooked up with on a boat. So you look at it and go, yeah, old Rose is kind of scummy. I'm sorry if I spoiled the way you view the film, but it is what it is. And then just one other for Titanic. What we are going to do next time is we are going to look at the mini series, the ITV mini series of Titanic, written by Julian Fellows, who did Downton Abbey. So that's the next one I'm going to be looking at, if the right one turns up. But I really like Titanic, and where does it go on our list? So number 1 on our list was A Night to Remember. Number 2, by default, was Titanic: The Legend Goes On, the worst film ever made. So where does 1997 Titanic sit? Well, for me, second. It's not better than A Night to Remember. It just isn't. As a romance, 100%. But as a film about the Titanic, no, it's a romance that happens to be set on the Titanic. It's not about the Titanic. So for me, a film about the Titanic, A Night to Remember is just the better movie. So our top 3 are number 1, A Night to Remember, number 2, 1997's Titanic, and number 3 by default. I say number 3, if there's 150 Titanic movies, it's probably 150 on the list. But number 3 at the moment is Titanic: The Legend Goes On. Now, you can still see Titanic: The Legend Goes On YouTube. I don't recommend it, but you can watch the entire film on there. But yes, next month we will be looking at the Julian Fellows mini-series that was done for the 100th anniversary of the Titanic, if you would like to join us with it. And we are still going to try and find Titanic SOS at some point. That's it for this episode. We will be back very, very shortly with issue 19, in which we will be getting our second smoke generator. So look forward to that. I hope you come by and join us again. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button. And if you're one of the thousands that watch but haven't yet, please subscribe. It helps us massively. It really does. And we just love having you along for the ride. So we'll catch you on the next one. And in a world where you can be anything at all, just be nice.